Today on Green Country People and Places.
This is Tulsa Violin Shop. We do all sorts of repairs, restorations.
I was lucky enough to work with Dad about 20 years before he died. He taught me a lot as far as design.
We are in Sapulpa, Oklahoma, and this is the historic Burnett Mansion. It was built in 1911.
Oklahoma's Green Country. It's full of unique places and interesting people.
This is a great place to come if you're a Leon nut.
I feel like I should have pointy ears looking through this. So come along with us. This thing's huge. And enjoy the ride.
This is Tulsa Violin Shop. We're located in the Brady District. We call it Brady Arts District in Tulsa. And we do all sorts of repairs, restorations, sales.
Now we're in the retail part of your shop.
Exactly right.
And so these are basically violins on steroids, right?
That's right, yeah. Those are double basses. And
they're huge.
Yeah.
I mean, when you're really up close to these things, they're big. I mean, when you see them on camera or on shows, they don't look that large.
What's interesting, though, is that when in terms, we have all the instruments in different sizes. This is actually 3/4 size basses, but that's the size that people normally use.
There's a whole size bass that's bigger?
Yes, but it doesn't, I don't know of one that exists here in Tulsa. There's a 7/8 size, which is bigger than this. And there may be, just a handful of those in the area.
Not exactly something you put in a marching band, huh?
Exactly. However, what's really fascinating is that there was a French maker by the name of Jean-Baptiste Violin, and he created one. He was an inventor of a lot of different instruments too, and he made one that was 9 feet tall. You have to stand on a pedestal, and it's got levers for to play the notes, and then a bow holder as well. So these are really not big compared to that.
So you say you play the cello, and this is the cello?
These are cellos. Yeah. Most of these are full size. There's a 3/4 size on the end, and another 3/4 size on that end.
Why do you have all the quarter sizes? Is it because of the sound or because of the size of the person?
The size of the person. I mean, students start out, as a matter of fact, we have cellos going down to what's called a 16 size, which is the same size as a normal viola size. Mm-hmm. But it has an end pin in it and a little bit deeper and so forth. But children as young as maybe 3 or 4 years old can start on something like that. Okay. And the analogous sizes on the violins and the violas too.
And speaking of violins, my sister's a violinist. She knows you.
Yeah, right, right.
And I'm very familiar with those up there, and especially the sounds they make when you don't know what you're doing. Yeah. I apologize to my sister. Now she knows what she's doing, so it sounds much better.
Yeah, these
are violas?
Yeah, those are violas.
Well, there goes my knowledge right there.
That's the alto voice.
So they get smaller as the pitch goes higher.
Exactly.
I'm not a musician, you can tell.
Exactly, yeah, they do. And the shorter the string length, the higher the pitch.
Okay, and so, but this is a viola, this is a viola.
Exactly.
It's just smaller for the smaller hands of the smaller person.
Exactly, right. So a student, that may be 12 years old may be playing a size like that, which is a 14-inch, which is the same size as a full-size violin.
Now these are violins. I'm in the right area.
Exactly. These are violins like your sister plays. And let me show you an example of one. And we're really fortunate to have, these are really nice quality instruments for, in this case, more of an intermediate student. And this one happens to be made in China, but really nicely made.
Really? China?
Good
You
wood.
wouldn't think.
Well, exactly, because there's a lot of instruments that are inferior that are made in China and Korea and this sort of thing. But these are actually good.
Where would you get violins before China started making them?
Germany, primarily. Germany, Czechoslovakia, some of the French fiddles were on this more student level. But I think these are a terrific value. And they're nicely made and with wonderful wood.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I mean, just the way it ripples in there.
The tiger maple or the a lot of flame in it. Yeah, and this back actually is made with one piece of wood rather than two. They're commonly made either way. So
now, is there a reason why maple?
Maple is acoustically a really good wood. It's not the only wood exclusively that's used in violin making, but it's available. I mean, it's not, you know, scarce. I mean, there are plenty of maple, but the thing is that the acoustic qualities of a wood are so important, and so by having the back harder wood than the top, which is spruce, which is a nice springy wood, resonates really well.
Well, we lost Lou because he's with a customer now, so now we have Phil. Phil, thanks for helping us out.
Hi, sure.
What are you doing? We're in the repair area, right?
Yes, this is a Tulsa Public School instrument. It came in without a bridge. I'm going to have to replace the bridge. So we start with a blank, which is pretty thick and obviously way too tall to work. So I'm going to have to fit the feet of this to the top of the instrument. It's actually a fairly good fit. So this is to start with.
This is basically just a standard shape, and then you whittle it down and carve it and sand it to make
exactly.
it.
What I will do is I will fit the feet to fit the top of the instrument. They don't quite fit there, and then I'll cut the top down. The strings need to be considerably lower in order to be able to play. So I'm going to cut off some of the top, put little notches in the bridge to keep the strings in the right place, and then I'll thin it out. Actually, I'll start by thinning it out just a little bit.
Over here, it looks like you got a little bit of torture going on another violin.
Well, this is an instrument that belonged to somebody's grandpa. It was in a barn probably for quite some time. These seams were open from here all the way around here. So I put glue in there and put these clamps on it to hold it together. This rib also had come out, so we've got all that glued up. That's where we'll start with there, and we'll clean it up. And you can see here we've got a lot of work to do up here. But they're not expecting to play this instrument, so we have some of the pieces, we will put those back in there, we'll put pegs in there.
Is this really common? People bring in grandpa's old violin, it's broken. Do they want it to play again half the time?
It is very common, actually. People find these instruments. Some of them think and sometimes it says Stradivarius on the inside, so they think, oh, this is worth $1 million. Well, that hasn't happened yet.
Yeah.
But some of them would like to play it. Some of them would like to just fix it up so it looks nice and put it in a shadow box on the wall.
Right.
But yeah, it happens pretty often. This one, you can see, is going to take quite a bit of work. This one is going to end up on a wall.
Yeah. Now you actually you work on larger things too, right?
Oh yes.
You do all stringed instruments practically.
Bowed stringed instruments.
Bowed stringed, yeah. So these are cellos?
These are a couple of cellos. This is a customer cello that Lou is putting a new bridge on, and he was working on the fingerboard here. It had a bump in it here, and actually it needs to be slightly scooped, slightly hollowed from this end to that end.
Is this ebony? Or?
That is ebony.
Whoa, that's a big piece of ebony.
That is, and on basses it's even bigger. So.
Yeah, and I know this really sounds stupid, but there's no frets on it. I mean, you play this by repetition, repetition, repetition.
By listening.
Yeah.
And repetition, that's right. You have to know what it's supposed to sound like, and you have to practice putting your fingers in the right place. There's another difference too. The sound ends up being different if you had a fret on there. The fret stops the string at exactly one point. When you do it with your finger, you can move your finger slightly. We get vibrato, which changes the sound, but the sound actually sounds a little bit different, even not using the vibrato.
if you happen to be driving through Locust Grove, keep an eye out for the Willard Stone Museum. You won't be disappointed. And we have Jason Stone, son of Willard Stone, here today. Glad to meet you.
Good to meet you.
Now, you too are an artist, right?
Yes, yes.
And your father is arguably one of the best Native American carvers around. And he had a heck of a career, didn't he?
Yes, he did. Almost a lifetime career. Self-taught.
Yeah, and is remarkable too because as a child he had an accident?
Yes, at the age of 13, he and some of his friends were playing with a dynamite cap, which blew off his thumb and first two fingers on his right hand, and he's right-handed, so he just had stubs there to use, so yeah, he had to learn to use that hand to carve with later.
That's amazing. And a real quick example, this is a larger casting of one of his most famous pieces.
Yes, it's called Something to Believe In. The year after his death, the family enlarged that piece, and so we'd have a kind of memorial so people could see here on the home place the type of work he did.
Well, and his style was really unique, wasn't it? It was voluptuous. It had large movement to it and looked at things a little bit differently than most people did at the time, right?
Yeah, he loved to use animals and the kids for examples. It's where he got a lot of his ideas, actually. He would sometimes walk out in the woods and sit down and sketch and just watch the nature on its own.
That's pretty neat. I mean, because you see the turtle, you see the child. He's really good at doing cats, too.
She's got to be in the middle of everything.
Well, when you look around here, you kind of can follow almost his whole career. And I'm looking down here. This is his first bench?
Yes, when we first moved here in 1948, he had an old shop building that with no power whatsoever, no electricity, and he used this workbench in that building.
I didn't realize that he actually did large busts of certain people.
Yes, this is Henry Bellman when he was governor in the 60s.
Okay.
He was commissioned by the Oklahoma Historical Society to do this because they have a bronze bust of each governor.
And I see, is this bronze also?
Yes.
So that's actually a little bit different than what I've imagined. I think of sculpture castings.
Oh, yeah.
So he would actually carve that out of wood?
He'd carve that out of wood, and the foundry, the art foundry, could take a mold off his original wood without hurting it.
One of the really neat things is I'm familiar with certain things your dad did, but the variety of sizes, width, style, and look, I didn't realize he was that flexible.
Yes, he was kind of well known for his flowing lines and the warmth of his wood pieces. So you'll see a lot of tall, slender pieces. A lot of the reason for that is because wood comes that way. You can get any length you want, but getting width and thickness is very hard to come by.
Right, you get too much cracking if it gets to be a really thick piece.
Yeah.
You know, you said he lost his fingers and he wasn't a painter then, but I see drawings on the wall. Are these his?
Yes, he sketched everything. He sketched it out on paper and worked it out before he ever started into the wood.
And this is the one we saw outside?
Yes, that's the original drawing.
Oh my!
For that idea.
This is a very small, intimate museum, and I like that because you get to see everything side by side by side. It's really neat. You see how his style flows through.
Well, thank you. We're very proud of having his work.
Now, we're talking wood here, right?
Right.
On the horse head, so
yeah.
That's interesting. Then behind it, that is also wood.
Yeah, that's sassafras wood.
Okay, now then do we move into the metals down here with the young child with the hat?
Yeah, this is a bronze, a limited edition.
Yeah.
One of his first pieces he cast back in the 70s, I think.
And then also he, early on, was not so much mentored, but Thomas Gilcrease helped him out a lot from the Gilcrease Museum, right?
Yes.
And some of these are the shots from him when he was working.
That's when he was working as artist in residence for Thomas Gilcrease.
And he had a big family to feed, I hear?
Mom and Dad raised 10 kids.
Oh my goodness.
5 boys and 5 girls. So he was a very busy guy.
Yeah. And I notice now, it's a slight change. This is your work here. You
Yes.
too are a carver and an artist.
I was lucky enough to work with Dad about 20 years before he died. And he taught me a lot as far as design.
Love the squirrel.
Thank you.
You know, you still have this, looks like the same sense of humor as your dad. A similar style, but it does look different. I mean, when you're looking at these pieces here, you have developed your own look.
Yes. People that know his work and mine, they can tell the difference.
You know, when I look at something like this piece right here, it's a Native American wearing a cowboy hat?
Yes, he's a half-breed cowboy.
But his hat turns into?
That's a howling coyote. The piece is called Songs of the Trail. That's one I did for when the cowboys were trailing cattle at night. They had to settle them, and he's playing a French harp or harmonica.
Oh, okay.
And at the same time, you hear the howling coyotes, and on the other side of his hat and the crown of it, little old screech owl. It's just different things that you would hear at night.
So as an artist, you really are not just whacking something out of wood. You're trying to tell a story, put together a theme.
I like to do that. Yes, and of course, Dad was, I'd say, expert at doing that.
Well, speaking of story, this one must have a big story behind it.
Yes, that's a piece out of one solid board of redwood, which was about 8 foot by almost 4 foot. And someone gave that board to Dad about 20 years before he died. And about 20 years after he died, well, I came up with this idea for a peaceful buffalo scene.
This is an old building. What is it?
That was the original workshop that Dad used when we moved here in 1948.
And you still have it.
We still have it.
How long has the family lived on this property?
Since 48, that'd be 64 years, I guess.
Wow. And did you say your dad's buried around here?
Yes, there's a family lot out on the south side of the place.
It's nice and peaceful out here.
Yes, that's one thing we've always enjoyed, being outside of the rat race, Dad called it.
So is this your new shop?
Well, it's not new, it's just the newest one we had.
Boy, this is one large drafting table. Do you do drawings before you do carvings too?
Yes, every piece I've ever carved, I've drawn it out and planned it on paper.
So is this drawing that you have right now, is it life size?
Yes, that's a hawk.
Is it going to be mounted on something? Is this?
It's going to be a person's arms and hands releasing the hawk, just like it's called free to fly.
Oh, that's neat. Are you mainly working with one type of wood?
Well, black walnut's my favorite.
That's not easy to carve.
No, it's a hardwood, but it's carves real nice.
Yeah.
Has a rich color and finishes real well. These chisels, which has to be always very sharp,
It's shiny.
Yeah, you learn to go with the grain where it won't split out. And shape it to whatever you want.
See, I've always wondered which side you're supposed to use on the chisel. That makes some sense there.
Well,
you're making a curve with it.
These are specially ground. This is just regular carpenter chisels that I reground. See this real fine bevel?
Yeah.
And
so you thinned that out.
it's thinned out a lot where you can push it by hand instead of having to use a mallet.
Are any of these tools from your dad?
Several.
Really?
These right here, he used his whole life. That's really old Stanley wood chisels. It's, of course, reground.
Well, you know, I really appreciate you letting us drop by and take a tour. And you're out of the way, but it is definitely worth hunting this place up when you're coming by.
Sapulpa, Oklahoma, and this is the historic Burnett Mansion. It was built in 1911, and a lot of the original stained glass and construction from that time period is still in the home. It has been preserved well throughout the last 100 years. Bates Burnett was an oil maverick, moved here from Tennessee. Moved here right after statehood and wanted to build a very southern style home, so he spared no expense in building the home. He shipped a lot of the wood from overseas through New York. All the stained glass was shipped in, and there's a lot of rare woods in the flooring, and some of the mahogany was brought in from Spain and Portugal. So he spared no expense. It took a total of $85,000 to build the home back in 1910-11.
Now when you come in off that beautiful porch, which is great Southern comfort living, it's a great design out there, you walk inside, this is the first room you come into. Is all this original in here, the walls and everything? I mean, is that wallpaper?
Yes, it's the original hand-painted canvas. They had 3 Italian artists in here, and they hand-painted the ceiling and walls. It took them quite some time. And everything's been preserved really well and kept in good shape.
And what was this little room for?
This is the gentleman's parlor, so they would get together, talk politics, drink, smoke. It is actually, the room can be shut off from the rest of the house. It has its own exit. Mrs. Burnett, she was adamant about not having gentleman's parlor, but the compromise was if they had it, it had to have its own exit. So she wanted to see her girlfriends downtown, and when they asked, was my husband in your gentleman's parlor? She wanted to look them in the eye, be honest, and say, I never saw your husband there.
Obviously this is a dining room. How did you wind up with so much space? You didn't alter anything, did you?
No, actually the home was built for entertaining. They hosted governors, statesmen. The wife of Mr. Burnett, Danny Ross Burnett, was a direct grandniece to John Ross, a Cherokee Indian.
Really?
You can kind of tell her heritage has been preserved throughout the home as well. We have some authentic arrowheads here, and this fireplace, one of the 5 fireplaces in the home, 4 of which we still have. This one here kind of shows the American heritage background that she was from.
Where'd you get where'd you get the head?
This is Ursula, our head. We actually, there's no historical significance. She's just a friend.
I love it the way you introduce her. This is Ursula, our head.
Southern sky. Have you ever noticed southern sky?
This area here was called the Gold Room. It's actually the entryway to the house. Mrs. Burnett originally wanted a certain stairs designed, and she didn't like the first set. It was kind of a Gone with the Wind staircase where it came up and out, and she had Mr. Burnett tell them to rebuild it. And then after 3 more times of doing the same thing, Mr. Burnett said, enough, we're not doing it again.
Now you do a lot of weddings here, so the second floor is kind of like a staging area for the bride.
Yeah, we use as dressing rooms. We have a groom's dressing room and the bridal suite.
I like the old creaky floors you got there.
Yeah.
So the bridal suite used to be what?
The bridal suite used to be the master bedroom suite. So basically this side of the house was for mom and dad, and this side was for the 2 kids. Mm-hmm. And they had an informal living room area, the bedroom, and what they call a dressing room. It wasn't a bathroom back then. It was just used for dressing. But it does have stained glass, so it's a very elaborate way to get dressed in the morning.
You have a lot of things, like you said, they're still original. You have stained glass, you have the great hand-painted canvases. You even have the bathroom still with the original fixtures, the gigantic sink and tub, right?
Yes, and the Burnetts weren't very tall people, so everything's customized.
3rd floor.
This is the original ballroom. And of course the stairs are wide. They wanted the stairs wide enough for the ball gowns to get up and down. But this is the original spring-loaded dance floor.
Spring-loaded?
Uh-huh, yeah.
So you can really be light on your feet.
The neat thing about the bench seat here is it has the original shipping address where they shipped the wood in. So it says BB Burnett, Sapulpa, Oklahoma. And they actually would hide their moonshine in here back during Prohibition. So,
what do you keep in there now?
Nothing.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Well, Mr. Burnett actually had his own moonshine still, locked away in this closet over here. And
it's not here anymore?
Well, we have a few bits and pieces. A lot of people ask if it's up and running, and it's currently not, but we may in the future. I tell people if the economy doesn't improve, then we'll start making moonshine again.